Well, hello everybody. It's the time for our Sew Bee Natter, and as you can notice, because it was Children's Week, we have an extremely special guest, and it's Isla Tremble. Gonna say hello, Isla.
Hi.
So Isla's 6 and has a very good opinion. She's looked at all of the show and all of the outfits that were made. So we're going to have her input, and we actually got some input from your 11-year-old brother. No, he's not 11. How old's he?
From a 14-year-old.
He's 14. I'd like him. He was cute when he was 11, though, wasn't he? He was super cute when he was 11.
I just need to clarify something. I was promised Miley in class today.
Oh, mine in class or Isla Ray Tremble? What would you rather have?
Well, we'll stick with Isla.
Yes, mine in class. And obviously we've got the very talented Mr. MacDonald with us today.
I don't know about that, but I'm here.
So it was Children's Week, and we sometimes don't always look forward to Children's Week. And I remember Janet's comment last week, which did make me laugh, when she said that you made to measure her child's models talked that much. She asked the child to be taken away. It did make me giggle. But I thought this week, anyway, we'll come on to that, but I thought Kaz was very, very clever this week by getting a little one to do something. So that was good. Anyway, the first project that was tackled, which was the pattern challenge, they had 4 hours. This week, I have to say that I thought that the timings were a little bit unfair, particularly on the last challenge where they were only given 3.5 hours. Anyway, the first one was to create some adaptive dungarees. They had to have elastic in the shoulders, snap fastenings in the leg. They had to be fun and comfortable. And they had a very special guest called Victoria Jenkins, who we have seen before on another programme with somebody that we both know. Rebecca Cole was one of the sewers on that one, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was the sort of like the head guru, and she's Rebecca Cole's actually written a book on pattern cutting specifically for different types of disabilities, and disabilities can be things that we see and things that we don't see. So for instance, people might have a disability where you know, they might act in a certain way, or they might have a disability to you and I, they look like just anybody, but in actual fact they have a condition which you can't physically see. So disabilities aren't always physical, so it's not all about that. And mental health plays a very, very big part of that as well. Yeah,
I think the other thing that they could have done on this particular challenge, which was, yes, talked about the elastic, it was all about ease of getting the clothing on and off. But to my mind, they maybe could have introduced something like a French seam. So you would, because neurodiversity, people don't want seams, they don't want things rubbing against their their skin. Obviously, choice of clothing is a big one. So like you say, it's a very broad subject. And whilst they tackled a small element of it, I think they possibly could have done more. Alistair, you said before the show that you weren't necessarily impressed with the dungarees that they're chosen as the item of clothing to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think I get the program, I get what it was all about, and it's fantastic because that there are elements of things. For instance, you know, some disabilities, for instance, when we get older, I mean, you know, Isla, don't tell anyone, but you know, sometimes when I put my socks on, you know, I struggle to get all the way down because of my belly. You know, that's a slight thing that I have. But
well, Granddad put his socks on this morning, had to go out and pick Isla up with no socks on because he's hurt his back.
See, so there's lots of things like that, and for instance, there's lots of things like for instance, like way back in the day when all dresses, the fastenings were buttons, and when came in fact, if you ever look at the series of House of Elliot, now I'm going way back here.
Yeah. Yes.
But there is actually a scene on there where one of the Artelier ladies actually puts a zip in for this older lady who it would be independent, being able to pull the zip up to actually do the dress up. Whereas with the buttons, you need somebody there to actually do them. So I think the dungarees in my opinion, I'm not sure that that was the best choice of garment to show us like the real need for it, because dungarees in nature, that they are a slightly baggier utilitarian type of clothing, so there is a lot of movement in there. You've got adjustable straps, although they're not elastic, but you do have that mobility within those garments. Then that's not a restrictive garment in one sense. So I thought they could have maybe have chosen a different garment. And Maybe's Educated is all about different fabrics. Is one thing Rebecca Cole does talk about, is there's certain types of fabrics. There's a family called Lyricell, which is a fantastic fabric, which is very kind and gentle to the skin, because not everybody can wear wool, because it really affects them on their skin. And some people are just break out in terms of like different poly mixes and things like that. So I think from an educational point of view, I thought it was great that they did it for the show. I think they could have maybe gone a little bit further and actually maybe told us a little bit about it, rather than about the whole thing that the fashion industry's starting to embrace it, and we're seeing a lot more neurodivergence and actual disabilities represented on the catwalks.
Yes, because they mentioned Tommy Hilfiger and Nike are actually introducing adaptive, aspects into their clothing. The other thing that Victoria said, which I thought was quite poignant, particularly when Kaz had done the placket the wrong way, the judges wanted a contrasting placket. One of the things that you would not want, and Victoria made mention of this particularly, was just because you're wearing adaptive clothing, you don't want a great big, you don't want to highlight that point. Whilst contrast is really good sometimes aesthetically, from a design element, I didn't necessarily think that was the right thing to do, to highlight where the adaptation had taken place. Poppers are great. I mean, poppers are great, never mind disabled or people with disabilities, but little children getting poppers on and off on, trousers or dungarees is considerably easier, particularly when they need to go to the loo. So you can actually, some of the adaptations that Victoria Jenkins is really wanting people to, and Rebecca Cole as well, wanting people to embrace, can be quite practical in everyday life for people who don't necessarily have those disabilities.
Yeah, and also poppers are great, but then the downside of poppers, if you have dexterity problems, so for instance, if you've lost sensation or the grip in your hand isn't, that's not going to help you in that sort of situation, because you might not have the power with your hand. And if you want to be as independent as possible, poppers are great for one a group of people, but they're not necessarily great for another. So I thought it was good. I just felt they could have done so much more in a positive sense. I'm not saying it wasn't positive. I'm just saying it could have really, it could have really sort of like enhanced. Like for instance, they could have shown a disability, actually have a physical person, and the person could then explain the problems that they have, and they maybe had to come up with. They're all given maybe the same garment, and traditionally how it would be made, but what would they do different in that garment to make it more acceptable? That might have been a better way.
The other thing was, I think what would have been great, having Victoria there as a judge, and I know I've seen Facebook posts, and she had a nice, enjoyable time, but use one of her patterns would have been a good one, because she would have created a garment with those adaptations, rather than, and she may have had some input, obviously until we speak to Victoria we wouldn't know that, but to me it was very, very minor. Anyway, moving on to all of that, going through the various problems that they had, one of the biggest problems that I saw was the straps were wider than the D-rings that they were using. Now, that's easily got round at home, because you would just go and choose a different D-ring to fit the strap. You wouldn't necessarily have to remake the whole garment. But Alistair, it was very we need to discuss how they got the elastic in, and also a couple of tips from you about trimming down, etc., for those straps, because that was one of the big problems.
Yeah, so where it connect, if we talk about the front, where it can, the back's going to be easy. I didn't, for instance, the inside of the actual garment, you'd have been able to have laid those in and sewn it into that seam, and when you turned it through, that was going to be there. So that's a much easier seam to look really nice and crisp and fresh. Whereas when you come to the front, I think a lot of the issues that were happening, and why I think, because they were all, from what I can gather, they were all given the same pattern and pattern pieces. But the pattern pieces, when that square was at the front to add the hardware, if I was doing that at home, I wouldn't have added that square. I would have literally have used the elastic, and I would have fold hemmed the end of the elastic and made that just the feature.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have bothered adding that extra detail, but the pattern asked for that to happen. What I would have done in that instance, to catch it on the top, to then catch it in to the hardware, what I would have done is, I would have, if you imagine you've got the elastic in the middle, you'd put right side, you'd put one layer of the fabric there and one layer of the fabric there. Then I would have sewn along the top, trapping all 3 layers, but then I would turn it this way round. And then I would have sewn very carefully with a zipper foot. I would have sewn all the way down using the elastic that's inside as my guide.
Yeah.
And then what I would have done is, I would have rolled that, I would have clipped the corners, and I would have trimmed down the excess of the actual seam allowance. Then I would have pulled that over the top of the elastic, keeping the seam allowance of the elastic inside. That would mean that I would get a perfectly aligned piece of fabric onto it. Also, it's to do with fabric choice as well. When we think of dungarees, a lot of them went for heavier fabrics, but in actual fact, you have to be canny in these challenges, because if you used a lightweight cotton, which some of them actually did, kit was one of them, you're going to get a more immaculate finish, because the fabric, when you layer it up, isn't going to give you bulk. So I thought some of it's down to the fabric choice. So when they've used, say, heavier denims or cords and that kind of thing, which traditionally we would go, oh, that's great. But in that sense, you would use, you're having, from the dungaree, you would have almost like a dressing gown belt effectively coming over from the top, and you're only trapping it into the back, and then you're putting that on the hardware. That's why I said before, I wouldn't have put that extra, say, like a detail on the end of the elastic.
I think also, like you say, it is, again, choice of fabrics, because I know there was a couple, and I think it was the very fine cord, because I recognised a couple of the fabrics that they were using. The other thing that I was going to mention to you was, obviously, the placket was put on at the legs. That was just to reinforce that seam, because if you didn't put the placket on and you're constantly opening them, and they're using the prim snaps, and I know some of them really made hard work of the prim snaps machine, of which I'll put a demonstration on, because it's actually very, very easy. You don't need to be using a lot of force in those machines. You just need to get it sitting correctly. But the placket, to me, obviously added that reinforcement. Kaz was marked down heavily because she'd got the contrast on the wrong side, although it wasn't on the exterior. You couldn't see it from the outside of the legs.
Yeah, I mean, again, the guest judge said quite clearly that, in actual fact, what she prefers in design is that the changes you make within the design are not visible, so that the person doesn't feel as if they're wearing a garment which promotes the fact that they're wearing something that's different to, say, you and I wearing it, that might not have a particular physical disability. So she's all about inclusivity, where it's not showing any difference. I mean, look, children's wear is children's wear. So if you make it bright and colourful and you change the little details, then that's all fine. But traditionally, a placket, you would make out the same fabric.
Yeah.
because it's a detail in itself. You can go overboard in terms of changing the color of the plackets and what have you. I don't necessarily think anybody should have really been marked down for that.
No,
I
no,
think,
if he's sewn,
yeah,
it's
I
the wrong way
think,
around.
yeah, I think if that was nice and flat and it was flush and everything was fine, I think, yeah, if your popper placement wasn't there and the hem of that particular around the leg wasn't particularly well done, then mark them down for that. That
Yeah.
plausible reasons to mark down. But getting the placket round the wrong way, the color around the wrong way, I don't really think that was too much. I don't know. But then again, as Patrick said, you know, right at the very end when they were talking about, you know, who's in the danger zone and this, that, and the other, we're being really, really sort of picky.
Yeah, picky. Yeah. So the ones at the end now, Isla, I need you for this one. When Isla saw all of them made, the first one you liked was the black and white one, didn't you? Do you want to tell everybody why? Because it was, what did you say it reminded you of? The black and white check, the dungarees?
Yeah.
You like them because which football team do you support?
Newcastle.
Newcastle United. That was our first ones. However, your fabric choice was in fact kits, wasn't it? You like that as the prettiest fabric.
Yeah.
So Isla's decision agreed with the judges on the fabrics. And what did Harvey say when he saw the hat that Dan had made on the black and white one? What did it look like? He said it looked like a chef's hat. Before even Dan said anything, he said, "Oh, it looks like a chef's hat." So he said it looks like he's working in a kitchen wearing that. That was his exact words. That's the 14-year-old.
Okay.
I'm a bit controversial this week with some of the decisions that were made. I didn't necessarily, I think, like you say, Kit did well with the fabric choice. My favourite ones were Yasmin's, and the only mistake she'd made was she hadn't done that little reverse stitch at the top of her pocket, and the top stitching had just come away a little bit. It wasn't top stitched right to the very top. These things happen. Remember, they've got 4 hours to do it. In real terms, she wouldn't have done that. I'm quite sure. I personally loved Yasmin's finished. Other than that tiny, and I know that, like you say, they're doing it on very fine margins because Kit's fabric appeared to be more of a cotton fabric. It was easier, for example, than Gainer's fabric, which was, I think that was a needle, like a very fine needle cord, but considerably thicker. Well, I've got thumbs up going up there. So yes, what was did you agree with the judges on the final one?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they were all very, very strong contenders, and they were all very, very different in what they and how they approached it and what they actually chose. So I think makeup wise, I think the people who chose lighter fabrics, that was a very smart decision. I think Kaz, I like the fabric choice Kaz had, although when you're using
giraffes, you liked the giraffe one, didn't you? The blue giraffes.
Yeah. But the problem when you use a large printed fabric like that, when you're using it on a smaller garment, you aren't going to be able to do any. You're not going to have any control over placement.
No.
You're half of the giraffes, their heads were all chopped off at the back. So my tip on that one would be, unless it's a large floral, which you can get away with it more. When it's a character or an animal, if you're doing something really small and it's a large character, stay clear of that unless you're making it as a panel on the front.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very, very good. I thought as well, I think a lot of them, well, I think it was Dan said, well, what could be challenging about, you know, this? It's much smaller, but in actual fact, when you actually do something that is smaller, there's very few places to hide.
That's right.
So, and it can become very, very fiddly.
Yeah.
So, but no, hats off to them. I thought they all did really, really well. But again, we're wheedling it down now, so it's getting the critiques are getting sort of like they are nitpicking ever so much.
Now, one thing that Esme did say, which I think was wrong, particularly when it was made up, this was at the very beginning. She said that she was really concerned about the top pocket because that would be the last thing that they would do, and they would top stitch it last. Now, my understanding from that pocket, from where the pocket was, you would actually put the pocket on before you did your side seams. So I had no, I disagreed with her on that one. There's no way I would do the pocket last. I would create the front of the dungaree, put the pockets on, do the top stitching. So I think she was wrong there. She'd got it in the wrong order. So yes, don't put your pockets on last, put them on first.
Yeah, it's like when they've made, you know, like shacklets or jackets or shirts or anything with a placket on the front. I mean, I've always said, and I'm a big advocate of this, you never, you make sure the placket and everything like that is fine. Then you make the rest of the garment up. Sometimes commercial patterns take you around this really long-winded journey.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I look at patterns and I'm thinking, why on earth are they asking you to do it this way? Because one, it's going to be far quicker if you do it in a commercial sense. If you were doing a run of 100, doing all these different steps, it's quicker to do a lot of other things before. I mean, for instance, if you're putting a cuff on, you would put the cuff on an individual sleeve before you then set the sleeves into the garment. But a lot of patterns will get you to insert the sleeves and then attach the cuffs and the collar, and it just doesn't work like that.
You've also got so much more fabric to deal with in the sewing machine, haven't you? You've got the whole garment rather than just having that sleeve.
Yeah, it's just common sense. But also, when you're thinking about it, the less weight and less bulk of fabric you can bring to your sewing machine,
the better.
The better. So if you can do the sleeves first or the back and the front, and if it's got a yoke detail and you're setting all of that in, and you've then got the collar, then make up the different elements before and then assemble it in one go. Don't sometimes I don't understand where that comes from, because it's not how we do it commercially. It's, I mean, I've been fortunate enough that I've had a very commercial background in terms of fashion, and having to know how factories do put it together and how to actually save money. So it's if are you taking copious amount of notes there?
Well, I don't know what she's doing. Right, why don't we put up here sewing? You search for sewing bee, and then you can see it all. All you can see is the top of my head. I'm not making that write out lesson notes. Anyway, so we'll go through the order how they came. So 7th. Can you do this? In 7th place, it was Kaz.
Yeah.
6th place was Dan.
5th
place was.
This is the dungarees.
Oh, right.
Hang on a second. 5th place was, I can't, so hang on a second. Who have I missed out? Kit, Yasmin, Stuart, Gaina. I can't even read my own writing there. That's terrible. Who have I missed out? Yasmin. Ola. 5th place was Ola. That's my terrible writing.
And then 4th was Gaina. 3rd was Stuart. 2nd was Yasmin. And 1st was
Kit.
Who
had the cowboy outfit on. I'm saying nothing.
I don't know who he was first. I thought somebody else was first.
No, he was first on the dungarees. Would you like wearing dungarees?
Yeah.
Look at that camera and tell everybody that you like dungarees. Well, actually, Isla's got today, it's got a pinafore on, which has got the dungaree type top on as well. They're easy on there to wear.
Yeah, I have the pocket as well.
Oh, you've got a pocket as well. Yeah, she's got a big pocket.
Pocket.
Big pocket as well. Yeah, pockets are handy though. Yeah. You can pop things in, can't you?
What do I need to Google on?
Sewing bee. So, So we're moving swiftly onto the transformation challenge, which was 90 minutes, and they had to transfer maternity wear into play clothes for toddlers. They were allowed 4 pieces of maternity wear. They were allowed fastenings in trim, sewing, and then Is it
a space?
Yes, do a space. We're just spelling sewing bee, by the way. 4 pieces of maternity wear, fastenings, trims, enjoyable for when a child is playing. Now, that left it open to interpretation. Was it? No, that's not it. Was it enjoyable when a child is just playing at soft play or in the house? Or was it
like at a friend's house?
Or like at a friend's house? Or was it dressy up playing?
You see, I will speak to every parent out there, especially when you take certain children to weddings and they've got their best shoes that you've just bought them and everything else. You know that the challenge is getting from your house to the venue so that they look smart for 5 seconds, and then know that little boys and little girls are literally going to be climbing the pews, they're going to be on the floor, they're going to have manky hands. And yeah, so every type of clothing, when it comes under the umbrella of children, is going to be for playtime, really. No clothes for children are for best, really. So yeah, the brief was very, very open. I thought, in actual fact, what I have written down here, and obviously there is some part of the world that is freezing over now as I'm about to say this, but I actually thought that using maternity wear, obviously, actually, if you stop at one, fair enough. But if you've had 4 kids and you keep that maternity wear specifically for those periods of time, because that's what you do, because you don't go, well, some people might go out and buy a brand new set. But I thought, in actual fact, it's actually quite a very good way and use of being able to reuse something that was for a period of time or for a specific job.
Yeah, exactly. Notice I'm just pushing the child out of the way so she can do what she likes.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. We did very, very well.
She'll be coming back, don't you worry, because she'll have an opinion, won't you? We'll find some games on there. So
there's not very much games.
I know. Well, because Grandma's rubbish. You can have a look at the photographs, though. Go into my photographs, and then you'll see the photographs when we went to London. Yay, we found something because she can look at herself, because most of the photographs are of Isla on there.
Oh no.
Isla, there's also a nationwide symbol on the phone that goes through to Grandma's bank account. And she'll
no, there's not. No. Right, we'll just knock him off on that point there. I just thought I thought the brief was too large. So Dan, and the reason I'm bringing this up is Dan, my little Georgie friend here, he did a dressy up outfit that was like a pop star with lots of trims, and even made the microphone. Now, Esme said that she thought that it could potentially be a trip hazard, but when you saw it on the toddler mannequin, it wasn't below, it wasn't like below their feet. So he'd interpreted it as something to play, as in playtime, whereas others had gone for more conventional, shall we say, toddler wear.
I think if they're going to critique contestants on a brief, the brief has to be cast iron.
Yeah.
And there can't be any dalliance about your interpretation. I mean, for instance, as an example, I went to Central St Martin's to study women's wear, which is well documented. And when we got our briefs, Central St Martin's students, if it was the dress project, there was one person who made a concrete dress. Concrete, yes. So they produced a dress, but it was made out of solid concrete. So in actual fact, they did hit the brief, because it was that. Now, when it came to the shirt project, which I think we did in year 2, I think it was, I'm trying to think, because it's many years ago since I did that.
1 or 2.
Yeah, well, if you look at the definition of a shirt in the dictionary, it is a form of apparel that covers the upper body. That is the definition of a shirt. So I made a hat because it's covering the upper body. So in actual fact, I was trying to be too clever because I was a student, but I got marks for interpreting the brief in a very creative way. So you can, there are elements of it, but I thought the critiques about, like, there was critiques about how they didn't think it was very imaginative. They thought it was quite boring. And then when people that actually then, like Dan, did go out on a bit of a limb and created something which, in actual fact, if he had been my uncle when I was growing up and he had made me, because I was very much into Shirley Bassey, I mean, very different to Taylor Swift, I must say. But, if I had been, spending the afternoon round at his and he making all fantastic and wonderful outfits, in my head as a kid, am on that stage. That microphone is my microphone.
Yeah,
I mean, how many of us used to have a hairbrush?
exactly.
And Top the Pops was on.
I'm going to ask Isla a question here. Isla, can you remember when you were like 2 or 3 and you had your dressy up box? Yeah, with all your different outfits, your Disney outfits and things.
Yeah.
So did you used to wear them when you went out with Mum? Sometimes.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
Mm-hmm.
So as a toddler, Isla would, what was your favourite? I can't remember what your favourite character. You had lots of princess outfits. I do know that.
My favourite character was Anna.
Anna, and you had an Anna outfit. That's from Frozen.
And Elsa one as well.
Elsa, and you used to go out with the Elsa outfits on, didn't you?
Yeah, and I'll pick up a big one as well.
Pink one. So therefore, rest my case here, that just because it was, thank you, darling, for that input, it was just because it was technically fancy dress doesn't mean to say that. And how often do you go to the shops and you'll see people dressed up as, what was the one who, Moana, another one, dressed up as all sorts as a toddler, because this is what the brief was. It was for toddlers.
From Encanto.
Encanto, is that who it was? Encanto? Remember you had the wig and everything, didn't you? So as a toddler, they will go out in fancy dress outfits. I mean, for example, Kit made the place. Oh, let's talk about Kit ruffles. Explain what a ruffle is, Alistair, please.
A ruffle is a section of fabric that it's in the name. It is a flounce, if you like, a ruffle or a flounce, which has a wave to it. So it's a volume of fabric which is inserted into a straight seam, and it creates volume. So a bit like he would have probably have been better off making a rara, but they were not frills. They were just straight bits of knitted fabric, jersey fabric that were just stitched on. I didn't find his that inspiring this week, and also, as we saw in the edit, he didn't like what he produced either. And
in fairness, he didn't. And
he did say that he thought that this was the worst sewing he had ever done, like ever. I think sometimes when we've seen other contestants come on and, for instance, their shape is very billowy and they like to sculpt away from the body to create volume and drama that way. When they're given a task where they have to come into the body, they start freaking out because you have to get the fit perfectly right. Whereas you've got a sculptural thing that's away from the body, you can hide the fit very cleverly. But I think we've seen quite similar silhouettes from Kit time and time again, which is fine. That could be his signature if that's where he's wanting to be as a designer. But I think sometimes when I do commercial design, for instance, my house of Alistair and what I am as a designer is very different to when I get a commercial brief. I might be designing cardigans and things like that have an RRP of $64.99 and have a 2% cashmere percentage within them. So I have to be quite diverse, and just because shapes and silhouettes are what I like, if it doesn't fit the client's brief, then it's not going to work for them. And so it's a particular we're seeing like for like. I just like to sometimes see a contestant, which we have had on the past, that surprises you every week because it's so different, whereas it's just not an adaptation of what they did the week before.
But remember, in the 90 minutes, and now Kaz's shorts and jacket, it was the purple cord with some applique all over the trousers, and there was an issue with the arms with the model. I love that comment, which was, can I make a jacket in 90 minutes? Yes. Does it fit? Not necessarily. And I thought that was brilliant, because when I looked at that, and Isla looked at it as well, the purple, it looked fab as an outfit. The fact that the arms didn't quite fit the model, I think, was, by the by, in 90 minutes. And I think this is what we've got to remember. It's a 90-minute project. And I loved the explanation of that, because I think aesthetically, okay, it's never going to be perfect. It's 90 minutes, but at the same time, when you looked at that particular garment, I thought it had a bit of a wow factor. And she'd done some applique. She hadn't only made trousers and the top little jacket, she'd done applique as well. So to me, I thought when she came last because of the no sleeves, I thought that was a little bit cruel.
I think as well with the transformation challenges, I think critiquing them on, for instance, like there's a bit of a hoo-ha in terms of, because when you've got somebody that drapes directly onto the dummy and pins it all in and sort of like loosely tacks it.
I'm laughing because did you see Stuart? He had the model down and he's putting round it. Don't do that with a real child, please.
No, you know, at least sedate them first, and then, you know, because, you know, you want to get the job done. You don't want, you've hurt me. So, anyway, but I just think sometimes the critiques that they have, especially during that challenge, which neither of us particularly enjoy, the transformation challenge, but does it have to be wearable? Not, I don't think so. I think the concept, when it's because it is essentially an idea, it's how you would transform what you're given into something garment wise. I mean, I'm not suggesting here's a packet of pins and just pin it all onto the dummy and create shapes and what have you, but you can see where the person was going with it. And because you don't necessarily, a lot of them don't necessarily have patterns tucked away in their little sewing box for the transformation chat, because they don't know what is going to be asked of them.
That's right.
A lot of it is by eye. So if you're cutting out armholes and sleeves, the likelihood of them actually fitting are very slim. Yeah.
So the other thing that I was going to say was, and Ola stumped Esme and Patrick, was the tights that you made out of the sleeves. Ingenious. I thought it was just absolutely fab. Isla's now comparing the notes with the. I've got another job for you in a second, though.
Kaz.
Yeah, Kaz, in a second. Yeah. All right, hang on. So,
so Gaynor, they commented and said it was practical but was not exciting.
Exactly. I've got not exciting written here. No. She's coming back in. She's coming back in. She wants to be back in. Yeah, I thought, and you know, again, I mean, sometimes I think we've got it in for Gaynor, but let's go through who did what in that particular challenge.
Yes.
So, 7th.
Kaz.
And that was because of the sleeves. Oh, right. Well done. That's Kaz. We're going to get photographs up to the camera. That's Kaz.
That is Kaz, yeah.
6th was Stuart. Can you find Stuart's photograph, just in case people haven't found him? No. And what they talked about there was that the dress was either too long or the shorts weren't long enough. And again, it's 90 minutes. And when Esme turned it around and said, what's that thing at the back? I was like, do you know what I mean?
Stuart.
That's Stuart. He was 6th.
Yeah.
Now, 5th, Kit did say it's the lowest. It
was 5th.
Kit. It's the lowest he's ever been in any of the challenges. And I thought, yeah, it is. He's done really, really well. If 5th's his lowest, he has done well in the judging. Kit. That's Kit.
Yeah.
And I thought he deserved to be. I thought he deserved to be a bit lower. Dan. He deserved to be a bit lower.
I felt that. I just felt. I mean, by his own admission, when you looked at what everybody else had produced, you couldn't actually tell what type of garment it actually was. You couldn't even loosely say it was even a top or a dress.
No, that's right. So I would have had him much lower. But 4th was Dan with the fancy dress. Dan.
That's Dan.
Assistant. Gaynor.
And
then we had Gaynor, which I thought was really unfair. You've already pointed that out. She did something fabulous. Again, her sewing is great, and I think she's doing really well in the transformation challenges, because it doesn't come easy to everybody. It certainly would come easy to me. So I'm really in awe of Gaynor for giving it a go, and Stuart as well. But I did laugh out loud when I saw him cutting around the mannequin. So 2nd was Yasmin.
And then
hang on a second. Nice features was the
that was the sport. It was So
then it was
That's really quite pretty, really. And
well, that was Isla's favourite, the skirt. It had that lovely orange top with the daisies on. So she'd put some trim on as well. That was your favourite, wasn't it? Now, also, can I just say before we go on to this one, that Yasmin, when you're talking about a transformation, had used the shirring off the back of the original garment for the back of hers. So I thought she'd really done well. Well, she didn't have time in 90 minutes to do her own shirring, but because it was on her garment, she'd incorporated that. So I thought that was a clever way use of that. And first was Ola. That's Ola, who's one of the youngest contestants. And they kept saying it was a llama. It was definitely a giraffe on the front.
Teenager.
I think she's only very young. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So first was Ola. She did those tights. Right, you're being pushed out of the way again, right? Do your homework, because I am. But they did say that they were judging on the finest margins, and that, I think the judges are realising that on something like that transformation challenge, they're picking for picking's sake sometimes. But I didn't necessarily agree with the order of that one.
No, I thought in actual fact, if I had done that and I knew that it just was not the best thing about the best thing about being a designer is that I self-doubt myself all of the time. I get nervous, a good nervous, but I think when people get a bit too comfortable and you don't feel those nerves, I think that's a very dangerous position to actually be in, because if you think that you can't learn anything, or you can't change anything, or you couldn't step up another level, or actually second think, all you need is one little comment as a designer when someone says, "Oh, I love how you've I love the how you've incorporated that drape," or I love the color of the shoes, or I love the detailing on the shoes, or whatever it is that you get commented on. But I think Kit was actually able to stand back and go, actually, that is not my finest work. And that's actually a big thing to actually do, because a lot of people, I mean, you and I know when you're doing live TV, when something goes wrong, and if any of the bees do start to do live TV, own it. Because when you start covering it up on live TV and a camera then just zooms in to the exact part that you're trying to keep your finger over, because you've either had a problem with the machine, it just makes it look. But the audience at home like to see that, oh, it's not just them that make mistakes, even the professionals make mistakes. So when you make a mistake, just own it. What's the worst that can happen? Everyone makes mistakes, even I make mistakes. So it's absolutely fine. Yes, exactly. We're going to go on to the made to measure. Now, the first thing I did was rewind this at the beginning, because we're only given 3.5 hours. And I actually rewound it twice because I thought I'd heard it wrong. 3.5 hours. For a 9-year-old outfit, that had to be made and fitted and inspired by what you, as in the contestants, wanted to be when they were growing up. Patrick and Esme pointed out that it was small seams, which means it's intricate and it shows all your mistakes. 3.5 hours. What possessed them to think that it was a small garment? The judges say it's small seams, it's more intricate, and it shows all your mistakes, and they reduced the time. That was my first thing. This was a really controversial one for me. The other thing was, just because you wanted to be a ballet dancer when you were young, and that the ballet dancer that Gina was when she was young in a crepe paper ballet outfit was very, very simple. If that's beautifully sewn, which it was, that should not be judged by somebody else who wanted to be something more outrageous, more flamboyant. Do you know what I'm saying here? I just found, again, this particular brief really, really difficult and hard, and particularly, and I know they have, because we've heard the bees say that they have a considerably longer feedback from the judges, so I'm quite sure there was a lot more said, oh, she's coming back in.
However, I just felt that there was a time issue, and who should say that one person's dream as a child should be criticised against another one because it was too simple. Anyway, that's me off my soapbox because I just really struggled with this one. However, if we go through them individually, and then if you can talk us through a couple of things, Alistair, from a technical point of view, because that's what the viewers on the Sownbee really like. The first one I've written down was Ola's, and she was the honeybee keeper.
Yeah.
So she did a hat which had the veil, which really enhanced it. She'd done the cotton jumpsuit, and she'd put some bias on. So have you got any tips for bias? And also she made a bit of a Henry's of the zip at the top, which she knew she'd done, but again, it was a time issue because she knew she'd made the mistake with the zip, but didn't feel that she had enough time to rectify that because it might have impacted on the overall look of the garment.
I've got a few different tips with bias binding. In fact, actually, fortuitously, excuse my derriere.
Well, that was better than what people saw before. Don't say the word. I was reading over the iPad.
Oh yes.
I have got clothes on, and I did have clothes on.
Let's just say I got an eyeful. So when you use this, is just normal cotton bias tape. Now, what I normally do, if I'm rushing something, and for instance, I want to be able to, a lot of people would take this and painstakingly iron it, and they'd be there for like hours. All you do, now you've got to do this on a clean table. What you do is you fold it over, and then I've got a table here on the edge. You're seesawing it on the edge of the table. Now, look what that's done.
It's like ironed it, hasn't it?
It's folded my bias binding. Yeah, exactly. It's like ironed it. So what that means is that's perfect on both sides. It meets. So when you insert whatever you're going to insert inside, it means it will be very neat on both sides. Now you can use bias binding attachment feet.
Yes.
Now, in my opinion, the best attachment feet is when you put the bias tape in completely raw.
Yeah.
So it's unfolded. If it is folded, what you can do, you can run the iron down it and you can cut it roughly down to size. If you've got a bias foot that actually folds the bias at the same time as sewing it,
yeah,
it will be very, very neat. You can get other bias attachment feet where you feed it in like that. So there's a little arrowhead that goes in, and as it goes in, you're inserting it, but it keeps it folded, and it's got almost like a little guide inside that takes it through. Those are fine. However, I've had several of those because I thought, because we use domestic machines on live shopping television, I'm used to an industrial one, and I only ever use a straight stitch. I don't use anything else. So I invested in quite a few different makes, but in actual fact, the looky-likey ones, please, in more often than not, don't waste your money. The tightening screw on those, with the vibration in the machine, it starts to go along, and it starts to open up. The actual branded ones that come with the sewing machines, like Janome, Juki, and Brother, other sewing machine manufacturers are available. But literally, those ones, buy a good quality one because you're going to get a better way of work. Also, now when you're going around corners, and it's say a round corner, what you want to do is you want to, now not overly, and I stress this, not overly, but a trick we use in industrial machines is we slightly pull the bias. What that does is it elongates the bias ever so slightly. So when you're going around a curve, it keeps the bias when it comes out a lot flatter, because you're actually put your tensions on the bias and you're allowing the work inside. If you just put them through normally, sometimes you get a corner that starts to lift and be a bit like a mushroom. So to avoid that, that's what I would do.
Also increase your stitch length as well.
Yeah.
And you're quite right about using the right feet for the right domestic machines, because also sometimes the fitting, you want it to go over the feed dogs, that's the bumpy bit, the teeth, and they fit correctly. So not only look at it, if it's a brother, it's not. Have a look at the model of your machine, and you can easily make a telephone call to your local stockist and make sure that that foot is appropriate for your machine. It's really important that you do that.
Yeah.
Yes, go for it. The other, so that was that. The zips. I mean, I've just done a zips class with a group of ladies, and there's various ways of putting zips in. I always, and Alistair, you were the one who got me doing this many years ago, tack them in. For the time it takes you to do great big stitches, it's as quick as pinning, to be perfectly frank with you. Always have your needle handy. I mean, again, they're really up against it. And I think it was Mitch Bridgewater who came on and said that often, because they've got all these tools in front of them and all these feet in front of them, they feel under pressure to use things because it'll be quicker. But you cannot beat tacking a zip in. Not clips, not pins. Tack.
No. When you tack it in, especially even if you're doing something as simple as an A-line skirt, okay, tack your zip in, because what it does, it keeps the zip nice and flat. My other tip when you've tacked it in is to then work the zip, close it. See that it lies nice and flat. Usually at the bottom, the base of the zip, you get this little pucker on one side. And that's just because when you've sewn one side down and you free-handed or free-balled it, if you like, literally you get less drag on one side than you do on the other. It also depends if you're using, especially with some side seams, they can be slightly, because it might be a curved seam, you then enter the fact that it's semi on the bias. So any fabric, when they're cut slightly on the bias, becomes slightly stretchy.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that you can do with that. Also, Viseline, which we've yep. So the seam tape. So for instance, if you put a line of seam tape, we do have that available on House of Asda, and use the code which will give you at the end for a 15% discount. But that gives you a little bit of stability with that. There's many ways of being able to put a zip in. A lot of people, the likelihood of you putting a zip in, unless you've been doing it in a factory for 15 years and getting it in on one go, is pretty slim. Also, another mistake people make when they...
You mean by if you don't do the prep first?
If you don't do the prep first and you think, oh, well, a zip's a zip. It's how hard is it going to be for the zip to go? Well, when you use a zipper foot, bearing in mind it's going through the zipper foot, which is quite tight anyway, and you're not going to get it will never go. It will go in, but either side of the fabric's not going to be. When you baste it in, it might sound as if it's going to take a lot of time, but in actual fact, it doesn't, and it saves you at the end. It
saved your hand at the end, and it would have saved all the marks that she lost because of her zip, and also that little bit of stress that was involved with her, because she did deliberate to it. She knew it was wrong, bless her, but so it is a massive, it's a time saving, believe it or not, than time wasting.
Yeah, and the other thing you've got to remember, the more and more you put a zip into the same position, you are stretching that seam out more and more. So do the prep, put it in once, do the zip up to make sure everything's nice and flat, then sew it in permanently. You can also use a much larger stitch to put the zip in initially first, test it that it's in, then use your smaller stitch. If you use a small stitch, you're going to be there forever unpicking it. What you can do, if you feel as if the sides are a little bit stretched, what you can do is you can lightly use a steam iron to shrink it, especially on wools. Wool has a memory, so you can actually shrink it back.
The other thing is there's two types of, well, the zipper feet. I mean, there's different types of zipper feet, because obviously you've got your rolled hem and what have you. But your basic zipper foot that you comes in with a machine, you move your needle either side. The adjustable zipper foot is an absolute godsend. They're usually the same price as a standard zipper foot, particularly the brother ones are, but you can also use them for piping as well if you're going for your bigger piping. So if you're struggling with zippers and you're struggling with the foot that comes with your machine, do consider and go and give it a try, an adjustable zipper foot. It will make a massive difference to your life and get you a far neater finish than the other one, which you've got a little bit of leeway with your needle, but not as much as an adjustable one. So the next person I'm going to go on to, I'm leaving, is Stuart, who was the Polar Explorer. He did the coat with a fur hood, trousers, The mittens were too big. I think that was by the by. Goodness gracious me, you need big mittens because he might have had 6 or 7 pairs on underneath. But he did twist the fur. So Alistair, you have sold for years fur, and you give various you've given various tips over the years how you have to comb it. There's a right side and a wrong side, the wrong way. How could he have avoided that twist that he made? Would again basting would have helped him?
Again, basting, but so I've written a book on, it's called Faux Fur Fun, and it's in the 20 to Make series by
Do you want
Search.
to say that again?
Faux Fur Fun. I didn't choose the title before you, and also you can't have any sherry whilst you're talking about that particular book.
Well, exactly.
So we get into a right model there, but there are very, it's fur and leather pattern cutting are a separate principle to main ones. The main one is fur has what we call a nap, which is essentially a posh name for hair. So like my quiff, for instance, you see my hairline there. So if that was the jersey end, and then you've got that there, which is 1.5 inches. Are you following, Isla? I hope you're not laughing at me. But that's where the jersey is, and that's the hair. So if I was to take well, I'll say why I'm saying scissors in a second. If I was to take scissors and I was to cut along there, that's the wrong thing. You always use a knife when you cut fur, because the hair protrudes over the end. So where you want, say, a coat to finish, you have to cut it, the pattern piece, shorter, because when the hair falls over, that's where it's finishing. If you made the pattern and you just made it up as the pattern, you would be wondering why the coat was longer, because the fur's adding an extra 1.5 inches onto it. When
he's twisted it, so when he twisted it, because he's obviously put it on the edge of the hood.
So what he's done is he's obviously stitched it on the outside, and then he's folded the fur into the inside, and then decided to try and either top stitch it down using the machine. I wouldn't do that, and we wouldn't. That's not how you would construct it. I would always tack it, but essentially you want to sew right on the very, very, very edge.
Yeah.
And that wraps it all in.
Excellent. Yasmin's politician's outfit, what did you think of that, Isla? When it came on, she's 6, she loved it. It was absolutely fab. It said what it was on the tin. 3.5 hours to make that jacket and that dress. What did you think of that one?
I thought it was really, really good. And in fact, when you compare it to people who were shown much later on, who also attempted jackets, bless them, and a lot of other ideas on their outfit, she actually got, I mean, yeah, there were a few bits and pieces that they commented on that were wrong and what have you, but I think depending on, if it was me, I would have made up what my dream child's job was actually going to be, knowing I would have to make it up, because if I chose something that was, especially in the hours you had, I thought she did, and I loved the colorization. I thought it actually did. It just said what it was that she was on about.
It was brilliant. So Kit was the singer, Elton John with the white dungarees. I think he had a little bit of a head start because he'd obviously made dungarees in the first challenge. With a sparkly top, he changed his pattern to adaptive dungarees by putting the elastic in the top, and that went wrong for him because they were too big. The other thing, which I do not like at all on a personal level, is the iron-on appliques. Now, iron-on appliques are great, and it's a bit like your interlining, as long as you follow the guidelines, and he hadn't. So what you need to do is you need to iron them on as per your instructions and leave that piece of fabric flat, because you need to let the glue... Go on then, put in the bin. You know where the bin is. Everybody doesn't need to see that, sorry. Go on. No, cheeky Charlie. So what he'd done, a bit like your interlining, is he'd ironed it on, and then he'd started to use the fabric. So what had happened was when Esme went along and picked off his star, was the glue had sloshed around and moved to one bit, and there was no glue on that top piece. So if you're going to use these iron-on ones, then you need to iron them on first. You know, we talk about doing things in different orders. Iron it on first, leave it flat till it's completely dried, because it wasn't the applique's fault. It's the fact that you've manipulated your fabric. If you then, you could still use an iron-on one and then still stick a stitch around it if you wanted to. And that's really, particularly when it's children's wear, you really want to make sure, you know, belts and braces, that it isn't going to come off. So yes, anyway, that's my little tip with regards to the applique. Was there anything, I mean, obviously he's fitting, and he did say if he'd had 5 more minutes, he would have changed it. Was there anything that you would have done differently on the dungarees?
I think for such an iconic character, all of the different outfits that Elton John has worn over the years, I know it's an iconic one from the film, and that is essentially it. It wasn't my, but when you say Elton John, I know that's one of Elton John's like iconic, you know, looks, and it was one of his very, very first ones. But I didn't fully think it was, compared to everybody else. I thought it is essentially dungarees, which don't necessarily have to, it's not, the fit of them can be adjusted on the straps. There's a lot of tweaking that you can do to make, say, that actually fit.
Yeah.
It wasn't my favorite one. It was well constructed. I can't take that away. But for me, if you're using an icon such as Elton John, I would have expected something a little bit more, because yeah, there were some people who were criticized for taking on too much, and the result was the result that we got at the end. And then other people who they have criticized, especially people like Gaynor, it's very safe, it's very simple, it's very that. But sometimes to get something really simple, the execution has to be faultless.
Yeah. So moving straight on to Gaynor's, because Gaynor's was the ballet dancer.
Yeah.
They zoomed in on where the petal skirt met the top part. It was absolutely spot on, that sewing. The fit on the top, she'd put the elastic in, that was beautifully put in as well. I couldn't fault it. I know Patrick, when he went the rounds, said, "Are you going to finish off the petals?" And she said no. She finished well within her time. She'd obviously, I think she nailed this, I'll be perfectly honest with you. And then at the end, when they were discussing her, and we'll come on to Dan's in a minute, and said it was too simple, I was speechless. I have to be honest. I was really grumpy at the TV last night when I was watching it, because I just thought, it's the sewing bee, it's a sewing challenge. What she did was take her childhood memory as a ballet dancer, and it was blooming brilliant. I can't criticise it. She did exactly what the brief was. I
think it's very different. I mean, there was other challenges, like, you know, when it was career week, you know, she was even applauded by the guest designer, saying that could go on a rack immediately.
On that one, yeah.
So and the fabric choices that she made for that were very sophisticated. They were very nice. A lot of people think sometimes that when you choose simple, or you choose, not everything has to hit you in the face. Not everything has to be a drama. Not everything has to be, you know, so flamboyant and what have you. Sometimes, for instance, when you look for underpinning, which, if anyone doesn't know what underpinning is, it's like a t-shirt that you wear underneath, say, a suit jacket, and it's just something that color blocks. So it could be plain black, it could be plain white, it could be any sort of thing. But when you're looking for things like underpinning and things like that, you want something simple, well constructed, and elegant, and what have you. You don't always need I think sometimes simplicity sometimes actually gets a bit of a raw deal. And I think as well, sometimes, by all means, if it's badly sewn, comment on it. But if you can't,
if that line had been wiggly on that little girl's tummy, where it was below her tummy, do you know what I mean? It would have. If there'd been a mistake with that, it would have glared at you. So I thought it was a bit unkind. But I know we've talked a lot about that. But can we go on to Dan's, who was impactful? You knew exactly what it was as it walked in. 3.5 hours. He did take a lot on.
he did take a lot on, yes. But I think, and I'm going to be really honest, I am going to be really sort of like honest here. You know, the time that you do save, because seams are slightly smaller, and if you're laying out a garment, you're not having to French seam anything or what have you. There was a lot that outfit commanded and had to be done, especially when you've got the overlap of the tails at the back for the ringmaster. He had all the, we call it on Savile Row, we call it Russia. Russia braid, which is the gold work braid that we put on all the military outfits. So that in itself, that is a lot, and also hitting the different weights. So when you attach that type of trim and you're coming to meet it, if you don't get that bang on, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So there's a lot of depth in that. Also, if you think a tailed jacket, that's almost like doing 2 garments in one. So there was a lot going on there. But again, there was a lot that wasn't finished on every element of that outfit. There wasn't one particular thing where you could say that, oh, well, he spent so much time on that one. I think, to be honest, I think it was a fabulous concept, and you could see that kid was just in his element in that outfit, and you could, and also panted down at the back, and you did see that. And I just think if he was following a commercial pattern, yes, there was a lot to go through. Perhaps had he maybe practiced it, I'm not so sure. All it does is it only takes one thing not to sit right, and you can't figure it out in your head why it's not lying flat, and sometimes you just need to walk away. But in the environment that they're in, they don't have the luxury of being able to do that. They've got that time. They can't really leave. What have you got to say, little britches?
Well, the last one that we haven't discussed really is Kaz's, which obviously was Garment of the Week. She based hers on Zandra Rhodes, she had a lovely berry. She was very clever in so much as she got a model to do some fabric drawing, which was amazing, which was incorporated into. Please stop fiddling with that. This don't work with children or animals, they say. Which was incorporated into a garment. It had the wow factor. I personally thought it was fabulous. You loved that one, didn't you? The pink one with the berry. Yeah, that was Isla's favourite as well. What did you think? Deserved winner?
Yeah, I actually thought, I mean, it was very clean. It was very well pressed. Now, bear in mind, that was a slightly thicker fabric, so you would have seen a lot of lumps and bumps in there. Very, very crisp. The pin hemming was there. Yeah, I think it did deserve to win out of the whole mixed bag. Again, as well, you've got to think about this challenge in several other seasons. This has been the sort of like the first challenge or the transformation. So they have said make a fancy dress outfit essentially, or that the made to measures at the end have always been party wear or what have you. So, so you've got to, I think, taking a bit of that in mind. But if you get out of the fact that a fancy dress costume, if you just call it a costume, you start to take a little bit more care over it. But I actually thought Kaz's was really stunningly beautiful. And also, when you've got a much, much, much larger print, sometimes that can be, in a way, pattern matching and getting the balance of that right. You can just be millimeters out and it can throw a whole garment off. So
exactly.
Very well done in the front. So hats off to her. I thought it was very, very well executed. I loved the prints and the colours. You could have put in a black and white filter over it, and it would still have looked fabulous.
It would have done.
Yeah, and I thought, yeah, it was lovely.
It was. So we've reviewed all of those. We'll come to the person who went home was Dan. That was very sad. It was very emotional for me because he was my little budgie.
Well, I got it wrong. I actually wrote down, because the series that we've watched time and time again, we've been for a very long time now. And I thought the way that it was being edited and the comments Gaynor was getting, I thought because they keep saying it's not exciting or it's not flamboyant enough, I thought this is the week that possibly Gaynor's going to go, but it wasn't.
No, shocked. I was absolutely shocked when it was Dan. I'll be honest with you. He was very upset, obviously, but he couldn't. I mean, I disagreed with the little resume that they did at the end, which was Gaynor was in the bottom because it was too simple, and Dan's was not finished, but it was too adventurous for the time scale. And I go back to 3.5 hours. ... So anyway, moving on, we had 3 giveaways last week, and I haven't announced those yet, but they are Sue E5M, I think it is, Julie Butters and Sandra Miller. I'll be sending you messages on YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. This week you've got 2 giveaways for anybody who leaves comments, and they're inspired by our lovely Dan.
They are. So it is trim. So what you're getting here, especially because it was Children's Week as well, if you even just want to freshen up, like you've bought a little jacket, maybe denim jacket from the charity shop, and you've used your embroidery machine. Pom-pom trim. Everybody likes a bit of pom-pom.
Oh, I love a pom-pom.
Yeah, now you get 16 different pom-pom trims in here. They're all 1 meter wide. It's worth over £30 for this bag. And all you've got to do is you've just got to it can be any view that you have. You just need to comment on the YouTube. Just leave us a comment, even if you just wanted to say hi, that will enter you in there. But if you don't make a comment, you can't be entered into the competition. The winners will be chosen at random by Ms. Sullivan and company. So yeah, so it doesn't take, if you're watching this video and you have managed to get to the end, well done for 1, and 2, all you need to do is just leave a quick little comment, and you never know, you might be this week's lucky winner. And
don't forget then, if you want 15% off the House of Alistair website, use the code B, which is BEE2025, and you'll get 15% off, including sale items. So yes. All I'm going to say is thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Isla, for sitting like a little treasure for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, enjoyed that. Enjoyed looking at all of the garments. Isla particularly liked, you're going to be shocked with this one, her favourite was the ballerina's outfit as garment of the week. That would have been Isla's, wouldn't it? Yeah. She really liked that one.
You liked Gaynor's?
She liked Gaynor's. That was voted, and Harvey picked the politician, which was Yasmin's. So my 2 kids, my 2 grandchildren, disagreed completely with the judges' garment of the week. Although you did like Kaz's, didn't you? You did like that lovely pink outfit.
Yeah.
You wouldn't wear it though, would you? No, because Isla likes to rock black. She's a rock chick. Anyway, until next week, thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and we will see you all soon. So I'm going to say bye-bye, Isla. You're going to wave.
Yeah.
You're going to keep waving. Keep waving.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.